Hi, it's Sandy, and today I'm bringing you my August wrap up. I'm still not feeling that great, so we are working with what we are working with, but I really wanted to get this wrap up and done because it's already late, so this is what we are working with. In the month of August, I participated in the Series TBR-a-thon Funfair edition run by Tori, and the art and things were all art graphics. Oh my god, brain not working. Graphics were all done by Bobby. I'll tag both of them down below. It was so much fun. It was stressful as hell because I decided I wanted to black out the board, and I wanted to do that with a book each, and I wanted to do that with no DNFs, which caused a little bit of Tori yelling at me because, well, I DNF'd 2 books in September. No, I did not. I DNF'd 2 books in August, which meant I then had to replace said books on my TBR, and it really got down to brass tacks. Like, I was reading till the last minute in August, and yeah. So I'm going to go through the 16 books that I did read, or 16 books and a short story that I did read, and then the 2 books that I DNF'd. You'll know how wrap-up works. I don't know why I do this every time. I'm going to go over the books and let you know what I thought of them. I've had to open the window in here because it's really warm and Hamish is panting and stuff, so if you hear any dog noises, I'm sorry. People say never work with animals, and honestly I can understand why, because every time I've started this recording like 4 times, and every single time he's done something to throw it off kilter, so we're just gonna have to persevere. First, I want to go over the 2 books that I did DNF this month, the first of which was Night of the Witch by Sarah Rash and Beth Rivers. I was trying to read that backwards in the screen. This was for Crazy Golf Star series, and I ended up the writing style was not for me. The storyline was very obvious to me. Like, I started skipping ahead to see what was going to happen, and everything seemed to be very predictable for my part. This, now that I'm thinking about it, this was very much like along the lines of like medieval YA HMRC. I don't know if somebody's like, the way I was skimming over bits of this, that's what it was reminding me of, like certain bits of HMRC or certain bits of The Shadow Cabinet. I don't know if anybody's read both this and Juno Dawson's books, but that's what it reminded me of. Like, obviously the witchy like lore and stuff is very similar, so I don't know. The characters weren't enticing me, the story wasn't enticing me, the writing style really just wasn't for me. The writing style was the number one thing that just, I couldn't blend with the writing style. It just wasn't my thing, which is fair. You're never going to like every book. It wasn't bad. There was nothing objectively bad about the book. It just wasn't for me. So unfortunately, that got DNF'd and I had to replace it. Next was Gilded by Marissa Mayer, which was my friend rec, which is for Ghost Train, for the bingo board. And this is, again, I really thought I was going to like this. It is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, which is something I've never read before, and I just found I was bored reading this book. Every time I put this book down, I wasn't thinking about it, I wasn't bothered about picking it up, and I wasn't thinking about the characters. I finished the book yesterday and I'm still thinking about the characters. I started a book yesterday and I'm still thinking about the characters. In fact, I had a dream that merged both of them together. Like, I'm still thinking about it. I have books that I read ages ago and I'm still thinking about them. This book, you couldn't catch me thinking about it even when I wasn't reading it. Like, even while I was reading it, sorry. And that just told me that it wasn't for me. I'm not a fantasy reader. Like, if you look at the fantasies behind me, these are the fantasies that I read. They're very specific types of urban fantasies. this does not fit into the type of fantasy that I tend to read, which is fine. Again, objectively, nothing bad about the book. I didn't dislike it, it just didn't interest me. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I know there will be plenty of people that really like this. The premise intrigued me, and there was parts of it that did intrigue me, but the bulk of it was just so boring, like the day-to-day living of these people in this feudal, medieval, I don't care what kind of bread soup you have, and like about the farming and the milling and the stuff like I didn't care. I did not care about the day-to-day lives of these people. There was nothing interesting in it for me. I cared about what happened when she went to the castle. And that was so, like, I was 180 odd pages in, and very little had happened in the way of, like, interesting to me. And I just didn't care I was listening to the audiobook and I didn't care to continue. So, yeah. Unfortunate, because I really like Marissa Mayer's Lunar Chronicles, but yeah, it's just unfortunately not my thing. So there are the 2 books that I DNF'd, and yeah, I'm basically going to go through the bingo board and tell you which books I read for which prompts and how that worked out. And I did manage to black out the board, so I read 16 books, or 15 books and short story, to black out the board. So the first prompt for the bingo board, I'm just going to go from the top along, down, along, down, along, down, along. Basically, like left to right, left to right, left to right, along the bingo board. That's how I've got my prompts. So the first one was Ferris wheel, spin a wheel, and for that I spun all my non-fiction because I'm trying to consciously make myself read my non-fiction. Otherwise, I'll just sit on my TBR cart for ever and ever and ever. And for that, I got Femina by Janina Ramirez. This is a... I thought it was a general look at women in history. I did not realise it was specifically in the Middle Ages, which, considering it's called A New History of the Middle Ages, through the women written out of it, I should have realised that it was actually a history of the Middle Ages. So I wasn't the biggest fan, I'm not gonna lie. It is not my favourite time period to learn about. It was very much the church, 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 the church. I don't care about the church. No offence. I don't. Like, Middle Ages England was like... Just like... Oh my god. If there's one time and place that I would scrub from history, that is one of the places. Like, it's so... so problematic. So yeah, the writing, the studying, the information that went into it, everything about this book I enjoyed, other than the subject matter. So, well done, I suppose. I don't know. Like, if this is a time period that you're interested in, you will love this book. It's just not a time period that I'm interested in. So, it was a little bit... I had the audiobook for this as well. So, it was a really interesting audiobook. Unfortunately, because I was listening to the audiobook, I didn't get to see all the pictures inside as well, which are really interesting. But again, it's all about, like, the church and how kings rose and fell, and I mean, it is there was the one thing I will say, and it's a weird roundabout criticism, and it sounds stupid when I say it, but there's so little about the women of this time. It specifically goes in on this one woman, and mostly makes comments on how all the stuff that was written about the men of the time and nothing was written about the women. And I got irritated with it for not having any information about the women of the time. But the point is that not a lot was written about the women, but it just seems really, I don't know, if you're saying about this is a book about the women of the time, and then just being like, oh, there was nothing written about the women of the time. Here's the thing about the men of the time. That was the only thing that irritated me. It's like, you're just rehashing it and then being like, but, you know, the women that we know nothing about were also here. You know? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. But yeah, because like there was a... But this, again, this is not my time period that I like to read about. Like, they were talking about like tapestries and stuff like that, and how obviously it was women that made the tapestries a lot of the time. Things like that were commissioned to be made by nuns, because they were all religious tapestries. And obviously the nuns that made it were women, and the skill sets of tapestries and sewing and stuff like that were all women's talents. And we all look at these things and see how magnificent they are, and about, you know, but it shows like the heroes and the kings and the knights and stuff like that, and that's what everybody talks about, is the battles that they show and the men that they talk about, and nobody talks about the skills of the women who created them. Because from the dyeing of the fabric to the creation of it, to the sewing, to the like weaving, to all of that is done by the women. And I just feel like she mentions it in passing and didn't really dig in on it, but that might be me not paying enough attention or just not understanding the literature properly, because that is 100% could be me just not understanding it in a way because I'm not an expert. But I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about this book after almost a month of having read it, because it was one of the first things I read. Jumping, actually, funnily enough, to the last thing I read, but for the second prompt, which is Dodgems, and that is a TBR vet, and oh boy, is it a TBR vet, and that is The Taxidermist's Daughter. Yes, I finally read it. I have had this book since 2014. 2014, people. 2014, it is 2024. I have had this book for 10 years, and it is the only Kate Moss I own that I have not read. I have an entire shelf over there, over your head there, of Kate Moss books. I love Kate Moss. She is one of my favourite authors. I've met her. She is a lovely, lovely human, an incredible researcher, an incredible historian, an incredible woman. I love her writing. I love her mind. I love her. But this is the one book I've not read because I'm so intimidated by it, because it is not, again, it is not the time period I like to read about. I didn't read it when I was younger. Like, I read Labyrinth and Sepulchre when I was younger, when I didn't have the taste I have now. So I enjoyed them then, even though they're time periods that I don't now enjoy picking up. Like, I'll still read them and I'll still love them because they're already sitting in my brain, if that makes sense. But like, nowadays it's not time periods that I would pick up. And this was the same. This was like early 1900s. Like, this was post World War I, I think. If not just before World War I. So like early. It did say something about 1912. I think she was young in 1912. I honest to goodness cannot remember. Fishborn 1912. So this might have been like pre World War I. Like, 1912 to 1913 is when this takes place. I don't tend to read that. Like, I am only just starting to read World War I historical fictions. I don't tend to read out with World War II historical fictions, which narrows down my reading. I totally get that. I am working it. There are things I read out with it, but I'm only starting to push out, is what I'm saying. So this has intimidated me for a while because of that pushing out process. And so this is also a gothic mystery thriller. And like, you ask anybody that knows my reading taste and they're like, don't do it. And honestly, for the first like half of this book, I was not into it. Not that I wasn't into it, I just wasn't like 100%. I just wasn't there. I was like lining up to be a 3-star book. Which again is fine. I still loved the writing style. I love Kate Moss's writing style. I loved the work that had gone into it, but I just didn't appreciate the story. Again, like with Gilded, I didn't quite care about what was happening, but there was something that happened that I was concerned about, and I wanted to know what was going to happen. Like, there was enough of a hook that I wanted to know what was going to happen. It wasn't that I could put the book down and not think about it. That's what was keeping me going. And then something happened about the halfway mark when I picked it up in that next sprint, because I was on sprints when I was reading this, and that changed the whole tune of it. That changed the entire tune of the book, and I was like, oh, this is for me. And so I finished the book, and it finished on a 4-star. Still not my favourite Kate Moss, by far. Still not my favourite Kate Moss. I think my favourite is probably still Labyrinth. Like, that has a special place in my heart. Actually, no, that's a lie. The Cave is my favourite, but that's a short story. But Labyrinth's my favourite full-length book. And that's about, it's the Cathars. That is, like, way, way back during, like, when France was 2 countries. Like, before France was France. Like, that is well out of my time zone. But still, I love it. Anyway, and something happened and that was like, I need to know what's happening. Like, now we're hooked. Now we're in. But it took about half the book to do that. So the first half of the book was like 3 stars. The second half was like up there. So it landed on a 4 star. This follows, I don't even know names. I can never remember names. But this follows our main character who witnessed something strange in a graveyard at midnight on the Eve of St. Mark's. And then her dad starts acting weird. And throughout the book, her name's Connie, that's her name. And throughout the book, it comes to light that she has no memory from before the age of 12. But because her dad is acting weird and he is saying things that are really weird, they're starting to trigger the memories that she has lost. And so her dad's a taxidermist, she's a taxidermist, like that's the whole taxidermist sort of angle of it. And they live in this village, or they live outside this village, and everything's kind of weird, that weird small town Murder She Wrote-esque, like, everybody knows everybody's business, there's like a little secret society that are really, you know, that sort of thing. And things start to happen, these men start to go missing. She's also kind of accidentally teams up with this man called Henry, so her dad goes missing, and then she is out in the garden, or her maid's out in the garden hanging washing, and she screams and she goes out, she's like, what's wrong? She's like, what is it? And she's like her maid's totally freaking out. So she goes and she sees the body of a woman in the river, and she's like, that is the woman I saw at the churchyard last week. Crap, what's going on? And so she gives her maid a shake, and she's like, Mary, you need to go for help. Go get the doctor, you need to go for help. She knows this girl is dead, but she's going to need help getting her out of this river. And so the maid goes for help, and Henry comes back. Harry. I'm just giving people wrong names. And Harry comes back with her. Now, as it turns out, Harry's dad is a doctor. And these two end up, like, he helps her get his body out, and then, like, he goes back for help to get, like, somebody to come and help with the body, and get the arrangements and stuff like that. But these two end up, like, interconnected into this mystery that's happening in this village. And he comes from London. So, like, he doesn't know that his dad is embroiled in this mystery as well, until his dad suddenly goes missing. And they sort of uncover this whole thing that happened that is linked up with something that happened in her past. And her dad's involved, but she doesn't know how her dad is involved, and he's still missing. And his dad is involved, and he doesn't know how his dad is involved, and his dad is missing. And there's just a whole thing. You get perspectives from the men that go missing, you get perspectives from Connie, you get perspectives from Harry. It is so cool. And there's this kid that reminds me of Fisk from Poison Study, and honestly, not Poison Study, like later on in the Study series, and I love that kid, honestly. But yeah, it's just like, there's no way to describe this book that makes it make sense, but it just was so mind twisty, and I really, really loved it. Like, in the end, I ended up really enjoying it. And it is a story of revenge, and it is a story of patriarchy, and a story of men who think that they can take what they want without consequence, and those consequences come in to bite them on the ass, let's say. Next was the Tal of Love prompt, which was to finish a series, and for that I used the Au Pair Affair. Now, this has since been, I thought this was a duology. Turns out there's going to be a third book. Now, I did not know there was going to be a third book until I finished this book. And on the last page of this book, it says, keep an eye out for window shopping, Tessa's next standalone novel. And I was like, oh, okay, standalone novel, available October 2024. And then when I started then I thought nothing of it. And then yesterday, now today is the 7th of August. Yesterday on Tessa's socials, now I've known about it since before then, but between finishing this book and yesterday, Tessa Bailey has announced she will be doing a third book in this series. So I genuinely thought it was a duology. As far as I was aware from the start, she said this was going to be a duology. It was a genuine, like, thought this was going to be the end of the series. But also, finish the series could also be used, Tori said, to catch up to it, like the end of a series. This is all that's published. There is no other book published, therefore this is the end of the series as it is published. So it still counts. And also, it's not that deep. Even though, like, I've DNF'd 2 books and still replaced them, even though I could have used DNFs. So, like, it's not that deep, but I still take it seriously. More serious than I need to. So yeah, I used the Au Pair Affair. This is the second book in what is now going to be called the Big Shots series. And this follows 2 characters, Tallulah, who is the best friend of the main character from the first book, which is Fangirl Down, and, oh my god, I'm so bad with names. Burgess, who's the best friend of Wells, who is the male character from the first book. I don't know why I remember Wells, but I don't remember the other character's name, which is terrible. And they have arranged for Tallulah to be Burgess's au pair, because she is moving to the same place where he lives, to go to university to continue her studies in marine biology. She has been in Antarctica studying penguins and other marine life in Antarctica, and when she comes back she's going to, I don't know if she's going to do her masters or whatever it is she's doing, but she needs somewhere to live, and the place she is going is hella expensive. He needs an au pair for his tween, she's like 13, 14, and so like they got on because they've met in the previous book, and he's like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll hire you, like, that's not a problem, you can have room and board as part of your, like, whole package. So she's got somewhere to live, blah blah blah. But what is unknown to us at the start of the book, until like the start of the book, and to Burgess for like a good whack of this book, is that Tallulah has suffered from an issue with stalking in the past, and had a serious issue with the guy that she went to school with in the past, and so she's absolutely petrified of being alone with a man that she does not know. And she only realises this as she's sitting outside of Burgess's house, or like penthouse, because he lives in like one of those high-rise penthouse things. And she is sitting there and she is like, what am I doing about to go live with a man that I don't know? Like, even though her best friend and her best friend's fiance have like vouched for this man, she does not know him, and fear and anxiety absolutely rule Tallulah's life. This book is so much more like, this isn't a fluffy romance. This isn't one of Tessa Bailey's fluffy romances. This is about Tallulah's fear and anxiety and how it rules her life, and how it completely 100% has stopped her from living. Like, she is so terrified every single day. She is too scared to be alone with a man. Like, I mean, fair, but like to the point where it is literally stopping her from doing anything. If she could like stay in the house and do nothing, and like just never leave the house because she is so scared, she would. She hasn't spoken to her family in years. Like, she's not living. She's living in this husk of fear. And this book is more about her having to face this fear. It's not about her getting over it, but about her having to face this head on, because Burgess is the kind of guy that likes to try and fix everything for everybody. Like, he really does try to fix everything for everybody. And so when he realises there's a problem, and he realises that not only is she, like, he sees her outside and he's like, what's going on? And she's like, I can't work for you. And he's like, okay. And he realises very quickly that she's not just like being awkward, she is scared. And he twigs that quite quickly, because he's quite good at reading people, and he's like, I'm not going to make her do something she doesn't want to do, especially when she looks like she's about to, like, she looks terrified of me. Like, I'm not going to press it. I'm a big, intimidating guy. I am not going to, like, I'm very aware I'm a defenseman. Like, that's what he is, he's a defenseman, and so he protects everybody. And he's like, I'm not going to, like, think you over and be like, you need to do this. Like, so he decides to try and fix it for her, which does not go down well. Does not go down well at all. But yeah, she does end up going to stay with him and work for him, but with some caveats. She works it out with him, and these two get to know each other. But yeah, it really is, like I say, it is a romance between the two of them. Obviously, it's a romance novel with Tessa Bailey, but the majority of the book really is about Tallulah learning to face her fear. And not to face her fear, but that's not what I mean. But she can no longer hide from it. She can no longer just push it down and distract herself from it. She has to face this head on, because she is living in a world where it's just not how you can handle things like that. Things have come to a bit of a head and she needs to face it. But at the same time, Burgess also needs to learn that he can't fix everything for everybody. He can't just blunder in, guns blazing and save everybody. He needs to learn that he can't do that for his daughter. He can't do that for Tallulah. He can't do that for his ex. He can't do that for every person in his life, especially not at the detriment to himself. And yeah, that's part of what I love about this book. Like, it's about those two realising in their own lives how the behaviour that they exhibit is not healthy, and finding their way towards healthier behaviour. Do they become perfect in the end? No. And I think that's great, because to do that in such a short amount of time isn't possible. And I think it's a lot more realistic that Tessa Bailey has them start out imperfect and end imperfect, but just reduce the chaos, if that makes sense. Anyway, I love this book. This was highly anticipated, and I'm so glad I read this. This definitely was so much... I enjoyed this so much more than Fangirl Down, but it was a totally different vibe, totally different book, so yeah, I'm really glad I read this. Next was Slush Puppy, and that was a book that was 2 or more genres. For that, I used Wait For Me by Santa Montefiore. This is I actually found this was more than the 2 genres that I thought. So this is a historical fiction, and it is also a mystery, because this is about our main character, Rupert Dash, and his wife, Florence. So Florence is actually the main character. Florence and Max are the 2 main characters, and it goes between their 2 perspectives, kind of. So we've got 3 timelines here, but one of the timelines is only in the sort of prologue and the epilogue, and the middle one goes between Florence in the 40s, and Max in the 80s. And Florence meets Rupert, or she's already known Rupert her whole life, he lives next door, but she has a crush on his brother, and then ends up bumping into him, and things happen. And they are together, and then the war starts, and Rupert goes missing and is presumed dead during the war. And Florence has to sort of deal with that. You get to see the love story, and oh my god, did that love story almost break me when he went missing. The whole way through this book, I was just hoping beyond hope that somehow Rupert was going to make it out okay. And I kind of hate Santa Montefiore a little bit. Just teeny little bit that they couldn't just let him survive. And then you have Max, who is waking up with nightmares of going to war and memories that are not his, obviously, because he is in his 30s, and it's the 80s, and obviously he didn't fight in World War II. And he believes that these might be memories from someone in the past. And so he goes looking into that and ends up breaking up with his fiancée, who, by the way, total douche. Anyway, I don't like her, she can go. And he goes on this journey of self-discovery and discovery of his family. Turns out he is related to the Dashes in a not a roundabout way, but he's a cousin. And it's him in one timeline trying to figure out how he is connected and why he's having these dreams, and if they are memories, if they are, what is going on there. And then on the other side of it, you've got Florence and her journey to her love story with Rupert, and then her acceptance of the fact that he is not coming back. And oh my god, this book broke me so much. I have not felt this way about World War II historical fiction in so long, and I feel like I'm getting my historical fiction mojo back reading this book. I cannot. And the fact that this book, I found out afterwards that this book is based on the story of a real person. So there's a real person that Santa Montefiore met and is obviously still in contact with, still friends with, and he had the experience that Max had. So he had the experience where he was waking up from dreams of World War II and things that he shouldn't be able to know, and went on this journey to discover what the hell was going on, and things like that. Just, I love things like that. I am so open to the idea of things being not what we immediately see and think. Like, there are certain things that we can't explain yet. And reincarnation is one of those things where I can't say I can rule it out. There have been so many cases in which people and children have had memories and been able to tell people specific things that they should not know. There was a child that was able to lead authorities to a World War II plane that went down that nobody had found yet, with the pilot still inside. In the middle of nowhere. How is a 5-6-year-old going to do that? His parents were like, we don't believe him. And yet he managed to do that. And then when he spoke to the pilot's friend, he was able to tell him conversations that only they had had. I don't know how you explain that. Like, if there's a way to explain it, we haven't found it yet. You know, I don't know. There are just certain things I feel like there are certain things we just can't explain yet. Does it make it magical? No. Like, not necessarily. Magic is just science we haven't figured out yet. That is what I believe. And things to do with, like, anything to do with the supernatural, I always see it as something we just haven't figured out yet. Like, if you think about, like, Newton's laws, energy can't be created or destroyed. And so why couldn't reincarnation be a form of that? And then if we're looking at ghosts, again, that we're looking at, like, multi-dimensions. Physics does have answers for that. So why can't it be real? You know, people say about they don't believe things they can't see or see the effects of, because obviously wind you can't see, but you can see the effects of it. And dark matter was something that we didn't know about until they realised that they could see the effects of it, even though we can't see it. I don't know. I just think this is so cool, and I love that it intertwined with this story. And I don't know. I just loved it so much. Next, and starting the new line, is Ghost Train, and that is a friend wreck. This is one of the ones that I did replace. Oh, my hair's going flying. And that is Cryt by Professor Alice Roberts. This is the beautiful sprayed edge edition, or stenciled edge edition, for anybody who gets arsey about it. And this is the edition that I got from Vicky, because she knows that I was dying for this edition but couldn't get a hold of it. And this is, I'm taking this as a recommendation from Vicky because she read it before me and then gave me it. Yeah, I love Alice Roberts' works. Again, this is very much like a continuation of Alice's works, and I listened to the audiobook as well as I read this, just because I like to listen to Alice read the audiobooks, and I think it's really cool to listen to the audiobooks. How cool is that as well? Anyway, this is a study specifically on sort of crypts and burials and things like that of the dead. So Alice did 2 other types of books. So Alice is a paleontologist? No, that's a lie. Anthropologist? No. Archaeologist. I cannot remember the name. Paleontologists do dinosaurs. Anthropologists do bones. Archaeologists do human historical dig things, like paleontologists but for humans. That's the difference. And I love Alice's works. They're always really accessible, they're always really interesting, and yeah, I can never say a bad thing about them. So this was just as interesting as the others, and that's really all I have to say. Next is the prompt for Swing Boats, and that is to flip a coin, and for that I had Vampires Never Get Old. This is a collection of stories about vampires, and is by various authors and edited by Zoraida Cordova and Natalie C. Parker. I love this. This was great. This was the only criticism I have of this, is that I wanted some of the stories to be longer, or like full-length novels. Genuinely could have read some of these stories as full-length novels. Each story and each author had their own take on vampires, their own difference in lore, and Zoraida Cordova and Natalie C. Parker had a section at the end of each short story where they took what the story was about, and they had a short discussion. Literally, like, there's a paragraph. And so this one, for example, is on creation myths and how vampires are created, because there's so many different creation myths for vampires depending on the lore. Like, I love it. I'm always an arse when someone says, like, asks about vampires. I'm like, well, which lore do you mean? Like, there are some, for this, for example, they were talking about how the fact that for some vampires you need 3 bites, for some vampires you need 1 bite and the venom will turn you, for some vampires you need to swap blood, for some vampires you need to be buried. It just depends on which vampire you're talking about, depends on how you make a new vampire, depends on what the blood does to you, depends on so many different things. And I love that about vampire lore and how it is spread across literature. And obviously each different mythos across the world has their own version of vampire lore, and I think that's so incredible. These are the kind of things, these types of mythos, these types of legends that I think are absolutely incredible. Like, there's so much around the world that we recognise as vampire lore, and yet it doesn't all agree. And throughout this novel, each of the authors has taken a different aspect of vampire lore and made it their own. And I really, really enjoyed this. Like, this is an older book. I keep saying it's older. I don't think it's as old as I think it is. It's 2021. I'm sure I heard about this before 2021, but, you know, 2020 did funny things to everybody's brain. I really enjoyed this. Like, this took me right back to, like, Buffy, to Twilight, to, like, my origins of loving vampires. And I'm so, so glad I picked this up. This felt like fate when I picked it up, and I'm so glad. And it really gave me a taste of all these different authors and their writing styles. And I can honestly say, not one of these stories did I dislike. Each one of these had its own value, and I really enjoyed it. Next up was Hot Dog, and that is to continue a series. So for that I used Stormglass, which was last month. Read for the Chronicles of Ixia really long. I will put that in the thing. Because I'm reading them late at this point because of who I am as a person. And yeah, so this is the first in Opal's trilogy. So we have the Study trilogy first and then the Glass trilogy. So this follows Opal, who's a character who we meet in the Chronicles of Ixia first trilogy, the Study trilogy. And Opal is a glass magician, so she can do things, magic things with glass, specifically magic things with glass. And yeah, this is the first in this trilogy, as I've said like 6 times already. And this is really interesting. So we're opening up to discovering more of what Opal's powers are, what they can do. Opal is just learning what their powers are and what they can do. This really did sometimes feel like a rehash of what happened to Yelena happened to Opal again and again. That is the one criticism I had of it, is sometimes it felt like we were rehashing the story previously. There were some twists and turns in this that I didn't see coming, and definitely some characters that came back that I'm so excited about because they appear a little bit more in the next book, but that's fine. Yeah, I overall really enjoyed this. I actually think I liked the second one more, but we'll talk about that next month. Next was Log Flumes, and that was to read a hyped book. And as I said, Becca, who I will tag down below, is a one-woman hype band for Ellie Hazelwood. And so, I read Not in Love by Ellie Hazelwood, and I genuinely can't decide if this is my favourite Ellie Hazelwood or not. Like, I love Theoretically, but I really enjoyed this. Like, this, I totally see what Ellie meant in her note. Like, there was an author note about this being slightly different, I said darker. Darker is not what I meant, but I know what I mean, but I can't word. You know what I mean? Darker is the only word that I can think of. It is not as light and fluffy as the others. It does take a slight tone change. And this one looks at different aspects of characters, and this one looks at characters who have been in situations that are a bit more abusive and cause ripples throughout their future. Abusive in their past, it's caused ripples in their future. I love this book. The characterization, you know, I'm a character-driven reader, and so these characters were incredible. I love these characters. My only criticism of this book is that I wish I had more from the side characters. Like, I want to dig more into the side characters. Give me more from the side characters. Like, this book could have been 100 pages longer and I still would have read it because I needed more from the side characters. I want to know more about Hark. I want to know more about I can't remember the other, like the couple. I want to know more about the people from Harkness. I want to know more about her friend and her friend's sister. Like, I want to know more. That's the only criticism I had, is that I wanted more. So yeah, I think that's good going. And he might just be my favourite love interest from Ali Hazelwood. Him and Jack are very closely tied right now. But like, I don't know. He lacks a certain confidence that Jack has. Like, I don't know. This, if you have not read this follows our two main characters, Rue and Eli. And Rue works at this small company, which was a startup. This is so shiny, I need to stop getting the ring light. And it has recently been sort of not quite taken over, but their loan has been taken over by this company called Harkness. And Rue is pretty sure that Harkness have some nefarious plans for the company that she works for. And it gets a bit twisty. It gets a bit like, people are lying. There was 3 or 4 main things where I was like, people are lying and I need to figure out what's going on. And one by one, these lies start to fall, and Rue starts to see that the people she thought she could trust aren't necessarily the people she thought they were. And oh my god, did I love this. Now, Eli is part of this company, and Eli and Rue meet the night before Harkness come in and take over this company. And yeah, it's really awkward when they see each other again, because they were a little bit anonymous, and then suddenly he's there in her company, and they're not on the same side, or are they? Next was the Crazy Golf prompt, and that is to start a series. And for that, I swapped out my original and swapped it for That Kind of Guy by Stephanie Archer. I don't know if you know this, but I love Stephanie Archer. Her books are up here behind the bat. Her hockey series, I absolutely love. And then when I picked one of these up and saw Hot Firefighter, I was like, oh, Small Town Hot Firefighter, I need to read this book. This is not that one. It is like the third one? The third or fourth one. I can't remember which one it is. But this series is a 4-book series that follow 4 brothers called the Road Brothers. Roads. And this first one is a engagement of convenience, or marriage, mostly engagement of convenience, marriage of convenience type book. So our 2 main characters, you have Emmett Rhodes, and he decides to better his town. He's going to run for mayor, but he's kind of known as the town's playboy, and that does not bode well for running for office. And so he needs to make himself look better by having a family, and it looks better if he has a girlfriend, fiance, wife, who is someone that the town really likes and respects. Enter our female main character, whose name I cannot remember. Enter Avery, who manages the town's sort of favourite local restaurant. And she is also saving up and working to the point of wanting to buy this when the owner sells, because she knows the owner at some point is going to want to sell. The daughter of the owner is really interested in taking over the family business, and she has moved away and had a child somewhere else, or is about to have a child, I can't remember. And so Avery is aware that the owner will probably sell, and she wants to be the one to buy and continue on this legacy. And so she needs a loan from the bank when suddenly the owner's like, I want to go live with my daughter and see my grandbaby. And she's like, oh crap. But given that she doesn't have a guaranteed income, the bank won't give her any money unless someone else co-signs her loan. Did I mention Emmett is vastly wealthy in this town? Like, exceptionally wealthy. Like, the town golden boy, other than the fact that he's the town playboy. His family are exceptionally wealthy. He is exceptionally wealthy because he runs a construction business with his brother. And so he offers to loan her the money, which she says no to, but will take him co-signing the loan. So he offers to co-sign this loan if she will pretend to be his fake girlfriend. And so making him look better. And so they have this deal so that she can get the restaurant and he can run for mayor and look good doing it. And of course, we all know where this is all going. This book, for being so small, for being under 300 pages, so much happens. And this is the thing about Stephanie Archer. She is so, like, brevity is her friend. And yet she can, like, she packs so much in to, like, she doesn't waffle, unlike me, who waffles so much. Brevity is the enemy of my soul. But Stephanie Archer, she just does this so beautifully. And so I am so looking forward to continuing the series. This book, so funny. There's a whole thing with turtles in here. A whole thing with turtles. And, yeah, I'm so looking forward to continuing on the series. Next is ice cream, and that is to read a favourite genre. And for that, I've chosen to read a historical fiction because, yes, historical fiction is still one of my favourite genres. And for that, I picked The Last Train to Key West. I keep saying the wrong name for this, so bear with me. This is one of Chanel Clayton's Cuba saga. So each book in this series, it's a 6-book series, follows a different member of the Perez family usually, but she has kind of expanded and is following other members of different people that you see in various books. Anyway, but there is a Perez in this book. This book is not what I thought it was. I thought it was going to be a stranger on the train type idea, but it's not. It's about 3 women. 3 women? 3 women. So you've got one who works in the Key West area. This is pre-Key West being like a rich bitch area. It is very much just like a small touristy area at the moment. The locals kind of live in near slum-like conditions. So you've got one who is working in the diner and her husband is horribly abusive, but she's pregnant and just trying to get by. He is a fisherman and just nasty piece of work. We have the Perez, the family member, who has just married an American, and they are passing by Key West on their way to go back to New York where he lives on their honeymoon, and from Cuba. And then we have the third, who's Elizabeth Preston. That's terrible. I don't remember the first woman's name. Helen. Helen is the first woman's name. So Helen has the horrible husband and wants to escape from Key West. Mirta Perez is the one who's been married and is going to New York. And then Elizabeth Preston has come down to Key West to find a missing family member. And all these women's lives kind of end up tied together in strange ways, along with these 3 men. So there is Helen's husband, there is an FBI agent that's following Elizabeth, and there is this man who helps Helen in the diner. He is a regular who works at one of the camps, because there's a camp that is to help World War I veterans. And is it World War I veterans? I think it's World War I veterans. Yeah. And it's to give them work, basically, because when they came back from war, they didn't know what to do with them because they were broken and couldn't just go back to doing what they were doing because, you know, war. And so they put them in these camps and they help build railroads and roads and stuff like that. And this book is based around a horrific storm that hit Key West. And the storm completely decimated the area, and all this sort of mystery and intrigue happens in amongst the storm. This book was so good. It was so tense. So, like, I did work out things and I was so happy to work them out. I was like, I think this is this person, this is that person, this is all tied together. Really enjoyed this book. Like, I enjoyed this so much more than I thought I was going to enjoy it. And it just proves Chanel Clayton cannot go wrong with these books. Next was Claw Machine, and that was a poll pick book, and for that, Queen Bee won the poll. So this is, you can see where the sticker was. This is the novella to go along with HMRC and The Shadow Cabinet, which are Juno Dawson's other books. HMRC and The Shadow Cabinet follow 5 friends who used to be great friends when they were younger, and when they were older, they joined Her Majesty's Royal Coven. After a war with the warlocks, things have kind of gone a bit sour, and they're no longer really friends. But one time, at this time, there has been prophecy about a silly child, and when one of the friends, who's the head priestess for Her Majesty's Royal Coven, thinks they have found this child, she calls in one of her old friends to help rehabilitate this child so that the end of the world does not come around. As a total really bad nutshell of this the series. Anyway, this, however, this is a novella set before HMRC was created. HMRC was created in the time of Anne Boleyn being here, and so this goes back to the time of Anne Boleyn, and this sort of surrounds the time when Anne Boleyn was queen, and before and just after her beheading by Henry VIII. Spoiler for, 1500s Tudor England. Yeah, I feel pretty much the same about this as most people you'll have seen who have already wrapped it up. It didn't really add much to the story. It was interesting in itself. I had higher expectations than I got out of this book. If I'd known it wasn't going to add anything to the lore, to the world, to the story, I would have enjoyed it a lot more, I think. But I kept saying, no, like, come on, like, where's the, like... But yeah, unless something happens in human rights that links back to this, this was unfortunately a little bit disappointing for what I expected, but overall, as a novella, I actually really enjoyed it. It was about love and revenge, and just, I really enjoyed it. Next was Roller Coaster, and that was to read a fast-paced book, and boy was it. So I read The Girl in Question by Tess Sharp, and oh my god, this shot up to one of my favourite books of the year very, very quickly. This is a direct sequel to The Girls I've Been, and this follows our main character, whose name I can't remember because of course I can't, Nora. And Nora has finished high school, and before they go to college and before they go, her and her friends go and do different things, they decide to go on a hike through the woods, and her girlfriend is going on a internship at this fire watchtower, and so they decide that they are going to hike to the watchtower instead of driving her there, and so that's what they do. So it is Nora, her ex-boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend, and Nora's girlfriend. And does that sound awkward? Yes, but it gets a lot more awkward when Raymond, Nora's ex-stepdad, or stepdad I suppose, is released from jail and comes after her and accidentally takes Wes's girlfriend, her ex-boyfriend's girlfriend, instead of her, thinking it is Nora. And so the teens then have to find a way to rescue her while also not being killed by a serious gangbanger. Yeah, this book was, I don't know how to describe this book. I don't think that does it justice. This book was so cool. There's a dog. The dog is never in danger. Let me just say that just now. I appreciate that so much, that the dog was never in danger. This book was so much fun, so cool. I could see this being a movie. I mean, apparently The Girls I've Been is going to be a Netflix movie. I really hope this one is, because I could just, this was so cinematic reading it. Like, you could see everything that was happening. I can't even imagine things, but like, I could almost like see everything that was happening. This was so much fun. It was so fast, so quick, so like, obviously never happened in real life, but like, this was just one of those books where it was just like, yes, this was so much fun to read, and not once did the pace ever drop, not once did the intrigue ever drop, not once did Tess Sharp ever drop the ball in this book. It just kept going and going and going. I did not want to put this down at any point. Like, I just wanted to keep reading. Even when it switched perspectives, I was like, no, I need to know what happens. So then you read through that perspective, but then it goes to someone else and you're like, ah. Every time it ended a perspective, I was like, well, no, I need to know what happened to you now. And you just want to keep going. And it was just so interesting, twists and turns that you were not expecting to happen for a thriller. I mean, it is a thriller, so I'm assuming that's what thrillers do, like they twist and turn, but it was so cool, it was so interesting, I loved it so much. Next up was Candy Floss, and that is a book from a favourite author, and I think I've 4 and 5 starred enough books now in the series to call Neil Shusterman a favourite author now, and this is Clearings. This is actually Tori's book, so I need to set this aside to remember to take it to her tomorrow, because I see her tomorrow. This is the short stories from the world of the Scythe, and honestly, I really enjoyed it. I was not thinking this was going to be as good as it was. So many people I've seen reading this are like, didn't really need it, didn't really understand it, didn't really want it, like, it was fine. But the connections I made, the dots that connected for me after reading this and after reading The Ark of the Scythe, I loved it. I loved having these extra stories of these extra people, like people that we'd maybe met, and then, like I was saying about Not in Love, sometimes I just want backstories and more about side characters. So this suited me down to the ground. I absolutely loved this. And the last story, thank you, Neil, thank you. I needed that. I really, really needed that, because I would not have coped without that. After reading The Ark of the Scythe, I'm not gonna lie, I needed that last story. Some of these stories were exceedingly sad. Some of these stories were exceedingly funny, and some of them were just there, and I appreciate that so much. It made the world so much bigger and so much more interesting. And I think what he set out to do was he just hit the nail on the head. He really, really did, and this was fantastic. I'm so glad I finally read The Ark of the Scythe, and I think I'm glad that I waited, because I don't think Andy at any other point in time would have appreciated The Ark of the Scythe in the way that I appreciated it. So yeah, I'm so glad I read it. Next is Fortune Teller, and that is a 5-star prediction. And for that, I read The Forgotten Shore by Sarah Main. Unfortunately, this was not a 5-star. It was a 4-star. It was a 4-star, but it wasn't a 5-star, mostly because I did not get out of this book what I thought I was going to get out of this book. My expectations were not met, and therefore I couldn't give it a 5-star. I thought it was going to be... See, it says, a missing heir, a buried memory, can the past ever let us go? This makes it seem like the mystery of this missing heir is going to go the whole book. It is answered within the first 50 pages. So, it gives, like, mystery throughout the whole... It's not. It's answered straight away. It is answered straight away. Had I not thought that was going to happen, and had I known that it was going to be what it was, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But because it disappointed me in that way, I didn't enjoy it as much. The story itself, I actually really enjoyed. I really liked the characters. The characters were fantastic. I loved the characters, and I loved the story, and the ending, was just... I enjoyed the ending. Not gonna lie. I really appreciate this book. I love the way it switched between Scotland and Newfoundland, and showing the different ways on how the economy has affected people, both in situations where it is a large estate in Scotland that used to be staffed, and the lords used to have all this all this money and wealth and standing and stuff like that, and now it's basically holding itself together with string. And then going to Newfoundland, where it is this village, this town, where it was not booming, but it was fine when the infrastructure was there for them to have jobs. But when the jobs dry up, the village gets abandoned. And it made it so interesting. It made me want to dig into the history of these towns, because you will find that if you go up, and it talks about it happening in Scotland as well, if you go up to the Highlands, you will see all these little towns and villages and random crofts where there are abandoned cottages and houses that have gone to ruin because people were either evicted off their land, be it by the landowners or by the government during the clearances. I'm holding on to what I want to say, or just because people moved away. Like, I think there was an island somewhere in Scotland that they were talking about recently, where the last residents have just moved off because there's nothing there. There's no jobs, there's no infrastructure, there's nothing to keep them there. And so they continuously, generations and generations, move away. The younger generations move away and the older generations die off, and there's nothing left. And you're just left with these villages and towns, and they're abandoned, and that's what's happened. And it happens to these small communities everywhere, and if it leaned more into that in the blurb, I would have enjoyed it so much more. But it didn't lean into that. The blurb, again, let it down, which is unfortunately what happens so much with blurbs. But yeah, if you're looking for something that looks at these sort of things and looks at the connections between people, I would say yes. Are we looking for like a deep dark mystery? No. No. But overall, I really enjoyed the story, and again, could have done with like a little bit more though. So we are on the second to last, and that is the Carousel prompt, and that was for an animal companion. For that, I read The Blackbird Oracle by Deborah Harkness. This is a seriously anticipated book for me, as it is the next in the All Souls series, as I'm now calling it, because it is no longer a trilogy. We have 3 of these books, the 4th book here, and this is now the 5th book. This is the 4th book from their perspective, but this one, there we go, this one continues on the plot, like, what's the word? Like, timeline-wise. The Blackbird Oracle looks into more of Diana's paternal side of her family, because this series here looks a lot into the bishop side. So it's all about the bishop witches. It's all about her maternal side, and we don't really see anything about the proctors, which are her dad's side of the family. And this is about the proctor side of her family, and Diana gets a message that says, come home. And so she goes and learns more about that side of her magic, because there's more than one type of magic in this world. Like, magic isn't monolithic in this world. There's so many different types of magic, and this is about her learning about this side of her magic. And honestly, it wasn't my favourite. Like, I found these so much more interesting than this, and I just feel like it didn't have the epicness of these. But I enjoyed getting to learn about Diana's other side. I felt like it just overstretched a bit with the inclusion of her children. I don't know if that's just me being biased because I don't like reading about children. Like, I don't mind there being children in books, but I don't like reading about children. You know, like, I don't like middle grades. I don't like when the children are really involved in the story, and they were really involved in this story. And I don't know if that's what it is. And things just fell off. The characters fell off. But at the same time, I also feel like they're meant to feel off. This lends itself to there being more books. I think Diana, why do I keep saying Diana Gambledon? Because Diana's the main character. I think Deborah Harkness is loading up to write more books in this series. And so I'm going to reserve judgment, because she is good at the long arc. And so I'm going to reserve judgment overall until I've continued and followed that through, because there might be things that make no sense to me in this book that once I read the entire arc, I'm like, oh my god, she was playing the long game. Like, she's playing chess, we're all playing checkers. Like, you know, that sort of thing. Because Deborah Harkness is very, very good at that. She's very good at dropping things in here, and then suddenly they become relevant here, and you had no idea. And then you're like, oh my god. And it just pops in your head. Like, so, yeah. I loved being back with these characters. Like, there are characters in here that I missed because they weren't really in the series. Again, I feel like she's buckling up to do something more with the series. So I'm going to reserve a bit more judgment. But can we appreciate how beautiful this is? Like, this book. And I'm really interested to see where she's going to go next. And lastly was the Hook It Up prompt, which is a random number generator. This one I had some serious issues with. I actually didn't even start the book for this and had to swap it out for a short story, because otherwise I wasn't going to make it. But for this, I read Goblins and Greatcoats, which is the short story that Travis Baldry wrote within the world of Legends and Latties. And honestly, I don't get it. Even more so than Queen Bee. This adds nothing to the world. It adds 0. It may come into play if Travis continues the story, because an artifact goes missing. But oh my god, I've just made the connection. I've just made the connection to Bookshops and Bone Dusts. I think I've just made the connection. The penny has dropped. So I think it does actually have connections, and I've just been too dumb to actually make them. I think I need to reread the other two to make the connection. But yeah, this is I can't even really tell you about this, but something happens in a tavern and someone is called in to investigate it, and things aren't what they seem, and it's quite funny. I have to say, this one's quite funny, and I really enjoyed it. Well, it was funny. It was very Travis Baldry. It was very, like, allowed him to have a little bit more of a funny side. It reminded me more of Bookshops and Bone Dust than Legends and Lattes. On like the funny side, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense in my head. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was good, but at the time I was like, I don't see what this has to do with it, but now I've just made the connection. So, never mind. And that is what I read in the month of August. I almost said September again. Yeah, so that's not too bad. 16 reads, 2 DNFs. It's not bad going. Not bad going. It was a total of 5,372 pages, if anybody is interested. Definitely not my best reading month. But, you know, that's absolutely fine. Oh dear. I had a whole week where I barely read anything because I was away at the cabin. I thought I was going to get so much more reading done. I did not. But I'm not mad. Could have done without all the stress of trying to black out the board, which is why I'm not doing any readathons this month. But yeah, let me know if you took part and if you managed to, you know, get bingos and things like that down in the comments. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.